This week, on A Nice Cup of History, we discuss a history mystery that has fascinated people for centuries. A series of strange sculptures on a distant island that tell the story of a people now lost to history, or at least they try to.
Now, disclaimer, whilst we've tried our best, as we always do, with the pronunciations here, they may not be correct. I mean, if they're coming from me, they definitely won't be. But we mean absolutely no offence with them, so please have patience and feel free to correct us.
And in this week's Ridiculous Death, we learn why you should always double check your glass before you take a sip.
So, grab your passport, pack your bags, check you've paused the milk delivery because you're going on a trip, and let's get historical.
So, it's more than likely that you've heard of the Moai of Rapa Nui, though you might not have heard of them referred to in this way. It's only recently that it has become more widespread, with people referring to both the structures and their locations with their original names. You may know them instead as the Easter Island Heads. But what are they?
In a nutshell, the Moai are monolithic, meaning formed from a single large block of stone. Statues specific to the island of Rapa Nui, always facing the inland, they are believed to have been symbols of protection for the various tribes that were living on that island.
Each one is carved into the likeness or memory of a specific ancestor within the tribe. It's usually someone important. The tribes believe that in the spiritual energy called mana that's present in all living things, the more powerful and spiritual people have, the more mana they have. It was believed that the Moai contain and even amplify this mana in order to protect the tribal village.
Some Moai, although notably not all of them, are mounted on top of special platforms called
Ahu.
Thank you, under which the bones of the ancestors that they represent lie, in order to still amplify their mana after death. So almost like gravestones.
Basically, yeah, like really, really, really big gravestones.
Fancy.
The quarry in the Rano Raruku National Park on the island is where the Moai were constructed, and large portions of unfinished Moai can still be seen.
Most were made out of volcanic stuff, but there are a few made from other materials, such as basalt,
Trachyte,
or red scoria, which is more easily eroded. The Moai are carved out of a single piece of the relevant stone and then placed on the platform.
Separately made eyes were added to them, but we'll come back to those in a bit, and gave the Moai life and allowed them to literally and figuratively watch over their tribe.
Whilst not visible today, unless added again because of erosion, the Moai also had a carved section of stone called the pakau, positioned on top of the head to represent hair. The people of Rapa Nui grew long hair, worn in a top knot, and the longer the hair, it was believed the more mana the person had. So the Moai has the pakau to increase the mana. So it's all about getting more mana.
Yeah. It's kind of like their version of chi, or spirit ability.
Yeah.
So the bigger the hair, the more the mana. Not every bit of rock made it though, and all of the broken pieces in the quarry do show this. Because of the soft nature of the rock types used, sometimes it could split, or tougher pieces of rock, or even various crystals or gemstones called inclusions, would be inside the rock and would make it hard to carve. So that piece was abandoned and a new piece was selected.
The Moai that are visible today are nicknamed the Easter Island Heads because, thanks to landslide and the passage of time, that's pretty much all that can be seen of many of them without excavation.
Dig below the surface and you'll see that they're actually enormous figures with arms by their sides, though no visible legs, with the exception of one that appears to be kneeling, but nobody's entirely sure why this one is different. It's literally just the one. Some have markings that are reminiscent of Polynesian-style tattoos along their lower backs and buttocks. These are called petroglyphs, which literally means like images on stone.
That's really cool. So they really make these stones fancy.
Yeah, they've really gone the extra mile to make them look as lifelike as possible.
Kind of creepy. The eyes weren't acknowledged until 1979, when a team of archaeologists led by Sergio Rapohoa,
Nice.
Howard?
Yeah, pretty close.
Found large deposits of coral stone around the bases of a number of Moai. Putting the broken pieces together like a really hard jigsaw, they realised that they were in the rough shape of eyes. They then looked around and found the remains of more eyes that made from softer coral stone and had long since eroded and fallen to the ground to break.
Not all of the Moai had eyes, it would seem. The theory is that only the Moai situated on the Ahu to channel the deceased ancestors buried beneath had the eyes in order to give the dead the ability to see once more.
Carving the Moai would have taken a lot of time.
Sorry, the gerbils are playing up in the
Do
background.
you mind? Sid, Scrap, be quiet.
This is not your moment.
They're fighting now, that's fine, they'll be quiet.
Okay.
Carving the Moai would have taken a lot of time and skill, but moving them would have taken much more. I guess similar to that of when they used to make the pyramids.
Yeah, the pyramids and Stonehenge, it's like, okay, you've got this rock, but how did you get it there? But it's the fact that with the pyramids and with Stonehenge, they got the rock, then moved it, then carved it, then set it. Here, they carved it, then moved it and set it. So all the work had already gone into making it. So at that point, it's like pressure.
Yeah, I was going to say, it has the potential to go very wrong.
It does. And the size of them. So the Moai have an average height of 4 metres or 13 feet. With an average base width of around 1.6 metres or 5.2 feet. So they're big, they tick. They can weigh up to 12.5 tonnes each. And there are about 900 Moai known to exist in a roughly completed form.
Sadly, not all of them are on the island. Some have been transported to museums around the world. Whilst we are in support of the work that museums do in order to preserve and educate around history, there is some argument to be had around how some exhibitions were procured. It isn't our place to go into all the ethical arguments around this. We'd be here all day if we did. But it's certainly worth talking and thinking about.
Yeah, definitely. For those that were completed at the Raraku Quarry, the question then appears of how on earth they got these massive heavy sculptures to their forever homes around the island.
Thing is, like many things with history, we don't actually know. And that bugs me. I hate history mysteries. I hate them. I need to have a conclusion.
History is like 10% evidence, 90% guesswork.
I don't like it.
It's like a jigsaw puzzle with the crucial pieces missing.
Not a fan.
Or the entire jigsaw puzzle is blue.
But then I do love history, so I can't.
Yeah.
But I have a love-hate relationship with it comes to history mysteries.
You love logic puzzles, and history is just like the world's biggest logic puzzles.
Yeah. But there are some pretty decent theories floating around with regards to the Easter Island heads, some with more credence than others.
What we do know is that it was the Polynesian colonisers who carved the Moai, and dating suggests this was sometime between 1250 to 1500 CE. So they had to be creative with limited technology, no steam engines, for example.
It isn't really known who in the community was responsible for carving the Moai, whether it was a combined effort or they had a specific caste or guild of sculptors or masons trained specifically for this, with sculptors from different tribes using different parts of the quarry for their ancestral Moai. Stories passed down in the oral tradition would suggest that this is the case, but there is nothing actually physically recorded, but it certainly would have been a group exercise to move them.
It took a long time to try and figure out some possible transport methods. This wasn't helped by the fact that when the Europeans first got to the island in 1722, there were hardly any trees. But in hindsight, this may have actually explained a few things. Modern techniques have allowed for pollen analysis, which shows that the island was actually densely forested until around 1200 CE. But then tree pollen seemed to have disappeared almost entirely by 1650. This corresponds to when the Polynesians colonised the island, that's right, they weren't natives, and when the Moai were constructed.
This lends credence to the sled and roller theory, that, once completed, the Moai were loaded onto large wooden sleds that were then transported across the island using logs turned into wooden rollers. The sled would be attached to ropes that would then be heaved by large numbers of tribesmen towards their new destination.
Yeah, similar to the way the Egyptians did it, or the way they believe Stonehenge was moved, using sleds and rollers. It would be a sensible theory and has worked for large stone edifices in the past, on flat land. The Moai weigh several tons each, and moving them over the surface of the island would not be easy.
Historian Jo Ann van Tilburg tried an experiment in 1999 to move a replica Moai weighing 9 tons using an A-frame sled on log rollers, but the rollers kept getting jammed. They tried again by embedding tracks in the ground, but they used eucalyptus wood for this, which is not native to the island, instead of pine, which is native to the island, and may have acted differently. It would also take a lot of effort to embed the tracks, and there is no historical evidence to suggest that this was the case. So, sledding Moai is out.
Besides, once the Moai had reached the area where it was going to stand, there was still the feat of getting it into a standing position from a lying one. I would not envy the tribesmen that job. So, maybe they stayed upright somehow.
Stories prevail in the island's oral tradition about shaman and divinely powered sheep. Do you mind? Apologies, my germs are very loud today. Stories prevail in the island's oral tradition about shaman and divinely powered chieftains who were able to make the Moai walk. A good example is the king Tukuhau.
Tukuihu.
Of course. Who, with power gifted by the gods,
Make,
commanded the Moai to walk into place. Thing is, whilst embellished, this might not have been far wrong.
An experiment in 1986 by members of the Kontiki Museum took a 5-ton and a 9-ton Moai and strategically placed ropes around them, one at the head and another at the base. It took 8 people to move the smaller statue and 16 to move the larger one, which is a much smaller workforce than the sled and rollers would have needed.
They used the chant to keep them in time. Think like a sea shanty, or for our Scottish listeners, a wall walking song. They rocked the Moai in rhythm, moving slightly forward each time and making it walk. It worked as a transportation method, but it was spotted that there was a lot of damage to the base of the replica, which is actually statues themselves didn't have.
So it seemed to work, but something still seemed wrong.
Yeah, something was off.
Archaeologist Charles Love tried a combination of the two methods. He placed his replica, a 10-ton statue, upright on 2 sleighs with log rollers underneath, and a team of 25 men managed to pull it using this method. They actually moved it 46 metres in 2 minutes, or 100 feet, 150 feet in 2 minutes.
That's really good.
That's pretty good. Considering it's 10 tons, I mean, Jesus.
Yep.
He has since suggested that there is evidence of post holes in the ground which would support his theory of this being how they were moved. Suggested though, the research for this has not yet been published to support it.
The best theory, supported by multiple recreation experiments, is one put forward by 2 archaeologists called Terry Hunt and Carl Lippo, who have looked at the statues closely and can see that there is damage on them consistent with movement being whilst the statues were upright.
What they suggest is that when the statues were carved at the quarry, they had a larger curved base. This would enable the statue to be walked from the quarry to where it would be positioned, with the damage being done to the extra base and not the statue itself.
They are supported in this theory by large flakes of stone found along the paths to the Moai that have broken from the bases, and the fact that the centre of gravity for the statues makes them lean forward slightly, which would be consistent with an initial curved base.
Once the Moai reached its resting place, the base would then be carved down into what is seen today.
I mean, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Imagine looking out over historic Rapa Nui, seeing these giant 12.5-ton stone people seeming to walk towards you whilst a rhythmic chanting song builds on the air. That must have been quite an intimidating sight.
Yeah, he's just like, oh man, I am not coming back here.
Absolutely not.
Nope.
Absolutely not.
Nobody is entirely sure why the construction of the Moai stopped. One thesis is around the rise of the Birdman cult. There's a specific place in this that's going to be mentioned that I know your Disney heart is going to geek out about. So the Birdman cult has appeared in over several hundred petroglyphs of the Birdman and Make. It isn't really known what these were for, but a working theory is that they documented the Birdman competition winners. The competition was where members of the tribe wishing to compete would climb down the cliffs at Orongo, swim to the little island of Rapa Nui, and steal an egg from the nesting birds there. They would then bring it back to the person who had decided to sponsor them, and the first sponsor with an egg would become the Birdman until the next nesting season, which is a position of some status.
I am Moana for Rapa Nui.
Yep, Rapa Nui is a real place.
That's cool. I mean, Disney is real. So
Oh, absolutely.
100%, obviously. Beyond that, not a whole lot is known about the rise of the Birdman cult, but this seemed to overtake the creation and maintenance of the Moai in importance. Work is always ongoing to try and find out more though, so watch this space.
There are some smaller wooden Moai on the island that aren't as famous as their stone cousins, called the Moai Kava. It's believed that these were constructed around the time of the fall of the civilization on Rapa Nui, which could explain why they look almost sad and a little bit emaciated. But they are certainly no less historically significant for their size and material.
That's really... So, we're not going to know, but however it was done, however it was moved, would have been bloody hard because it has nothing that we have today.
It would have to
so
have been a
however
work
it's
of dedication.
done, it would have been horrid.
Yeah, it would have been effort. It would have been a lot of effort. You could not skip leg day.
Then they must have been of huge significant importance to warrant the effort.
There was a documentary I watched a couple of years ago, and it was believed that some of the placements of them marked areas where there were water sources on the island. So they were watching over their tribes, but they were also showing them where the certain resources could be found. And there's some that stand near the sea as well, and they're all looking inland, apart from these 7 that stand near the sea, that apparently are representative of men that were waiting for their king to come back, and he never did.
I feel I may have watched that, because we used to watch a show in our geography lessons in high school on Easter Island.
It's an interesting place. It's one of those places where you hear a lot about, but you don't actually really research it too much until you have to research it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it sounds like a pretty cool sounds like a cool place.
Yeah, and for some reason I would have assumed it might have been like a spooky place, but it doesn't sound like it is at all.
I think if you see those statues at night, if you see the Moai at night in certain lights, it would be a little bit intimidating.
Yeah.
But I don't get the vibe, like looking at pictures of them and everything, I don't get the vibe of angry, stay away statues. I get the vibe of they're watching, they're looking after.
Still a bit creeps.
Yeah, to be fair.
But sadly, the reign of the Moai wouldn't last. After the arrival of Dutch explorer Jacob Roggeveen in 1722, who named the place Easter Island because of the date he landed there, the Moai began to be toppled, with none left upright by 1868, with the exception of the heads, the ones that were partially buried near the quarry site.
Some were toppled due to earthquakes, others are believed to have been brought down by wayward clan members.
To date, around 50 Moai have been resurrected either onto their arras or taken to be displayed in museums.
So, sadly, as this happened far too much, the people of Rapa Nui did fall victim to a slave trade that hit the island in the 1860s. It took less than a year for the islanders left behind to fall sick or into disorder with the lack of leadership. This left them open to influence from Christian missionaries, and slowly their culture was erased, with expressions such as tattoos and body art being forbidden as being against Christian ideals.
Eventually, the islanders were forced to live on a much smaller segment of their island, whilst
Peruvians,
that's a cool word. Peruvians took over the larger part of the island to use for farming.
Work is ongoing to raise awareness of and revive the culture of the Rapa Nui peoples, including the Moai. I mean, one of the main things is changing its name in common conversation from Easter Island to Rapa Nui, back to its original. They are now a protected feature on the island, and any attempt to damage or deface them will lead to hefty fines and other repercussions.
Good.
Yeah, so it should be.
Various projects are ongoing to restore and protect the Moai and carefully excavate the buried statues to try and help us to understand more about the rich history and culture of the island. And all traditions that have been passed down are being recorded so as not to lose them again. Sorry.
That's okay.
I felt it building while I was talking.
You did well to carry on. We can't take back what has been done to the people and the landscape of Rapa Nui. We may never know who the individuals are that the Moai represent, and it will only ever be a replica that is now seen walking over the landscape of Rapa Nui. But what we do know about them now, we can keep alive, and we can help those ancestors to continue watching over their beautiful island long after the descendants are gone from it.
We've done that by telling their stories to you. You can now do that by passing this knowledge on, or by going to see the island for yourself. But be respectful when you do. The Moai are watching you.
So, what do you think about the Easter Island, the Moai?
I think it's good that we know more about them, because obviously they are depicted in the Nightmare at the Museum. Because when we very first started talking about this, I literally just looked at you and went, dum dum one, gum gum.
Yeah.
And you were like, what?
It took me a minute to do it. And I was like, oh yeah.
Because they are depicted, just the head
Yeah.
is depicted in The Night at the Museum in the Smithsonian. Is that where it's based?
No, it's actually, it's in the,
Is it
the
in New York?
The Natural History Museum.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, I'm pretty sure I've seen one of them before. I think there might be one in the Natural History Museum in London.
Yeah, there's one in the British Museum, and there's work ongoing with the people of Rapa Nui to try and get that back. So, because there's a lot of focus at the moment on how certain museums acquired certain exhibits, Egypt being the main one for that.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer in that artifacts should be preserved in the museum when it's not likely that they'll be preserved out in the wild, so to speak, but within reason. So, by all means, have loads and loads of British, Scottish, Irish, whatever artifacts in our museums, but have the artifacts of that country on loan from that country.
Yeah.
And then send them back again because they belong there. But there's plenty of Roman artifacts and things that could be found here.
Yeah.
The Romans were here.
But then I guess on the other side you've got, I get having them loaned to us and stuff, but then if they're already here,
how much damage would it cause to
exactly
them again? Yeah,
because I know that the museums do get a lot of money to maintain and to keep them preserved as best as possible.
Yeah. Sorry, the gerbils are starting again. You can probably hear it in the background. They've been cleaned out, so they're just throwing a hissy fit because their cage doesn't smell like them anymore. It smells like M.
I don't know why they're so loud. They're normally asleep this time of day.
They've just decided, you know what, we're gonna wake up and we choose violence and fuckery today.
Definitely. Christ. But yeah, I do think that sometimes keeping them here, either leave them where they be, or once they've moved once, leave them where they be.
But if we have them, we have to make sure that firstly they are treated with respect.
Yeah, definitely.
And they are well looked after. But also that as much information is found out about them as possible to try and tell people about them. So yeah, that's our opinion anyway. Obviously,
completely agree.
Yeah. So, ridiculous death time.
Yeah, our weekly segment of ridiculous deaths.
So, our ridiculous death, because these are the Moai were religious figures, so I've gone for a religious figure.
Fair one.
But he's a Catholic religious figure.
Okay.
The Catholic religious figure.
Oh.
The Pope.
Oh, a Pope.
Pope Adrian IV, also known as Hadrian IV.
I was going to say, Adrian doesn't strike me as a popey name.
Adrian is an anglicised thing.
Oh, okay.
And there's a reason it's anglicised, because, why not make it confusing? He was born as Nicholas Breakspar in around 1100 CE and was the only Englishman who ever became Pope. And he was Pope between 1154 to 1159 CE. Or AD, if we're going to talk about popes, we should probably use the Christian version of it. He was born in Hertfordshire in England, and he later travelled to France to study law before joining the church. He rose quickly through the ranks of the church and was eventually elected Pope on the death of his predecessor, Pope Anastasius IV. At the time of his death, there was an ongoing diplomatic struggle with the then Holy Roman Emperor Frederick I. It got so bad that it made Adrian IV sick. It's believed that he developed a thing at the time called quinsy, which is a severe inflammation of the tonsils. Think tonsillitis but worse, like tonsillitis all the time. Eventually, it was Pope Adrian's plan to excommunicate Frederick for his actions and be rid of him. As far as Catholic Church done, once you're excommunicated, you're done.
Yeah.
However, he didn't get a chance to do this, as one night, whilst doing his popey duties and enjoying a nice glass of wine to try and soothe his burning throat, he drank deeply without looking, swallowed a large fly floating in his glass, and because of his inflamed tonsils, he choked to death on it. There was a new pope who swallowed a fly. He died. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
His tonsils were that inflamed that when he swallowed a fly, he choked and died.
As you said that, a fly flew between us onto my window.
I like to think that fly was thinking, yeah, I could murder people, bitches.
My ancestor. Holy shit.
Literally. So yeah, there once was a pope who swallowed a fly.
He died. Wow. That is, I don't know, these ridiculous deaths, I always feel like, are we going to get to a point where we can't find any more? And then, lo and behold, there's
Terrible.
another ridiculous way someone has left this mortal coil.
I mean, they're getting increasingly harder to find, but we do have to give a special mention to Horrible Histories, because there are quite a few on there where we see them and then we're like, seriously, and we read them and it's true. So they've given us a few, but honestly, when just Google unusual deaths in history and
there's a whole list.
There are magnificent ways people have removed themselves from the gene pool.
There are, definitely. So here's to our other segment that we do on this podcast that you forgot about and your eyes are really widening, so this could be fun.
Oh, no, I remember now. Okay.
So, this is brand new. So,
Carrie's random facts. Okay, my random fact today is one that actually blew your mind the other day, and you hate historical timeline facts.
Well, they make me feel uncomfortable. I don't hate them, I just feel very uncomfortable with them.
Well, this one is about one of my favourite historical things of all time, if they can be called historicals, because they're technically prehistorical. Dinosaurs! I love dinosaurs!
Can you have something prehistorical? Because it still happened in the past, so technically in that it is historical.
But historical is considered recorded history, and prehistorical is pre-recorded history.
Okay.
So before people were able to write. I mean, we have yet to find the scroll of the Great T-Rex, so it's entirely possible.
He can't write!
Oh, no, he can't. Oh, that was
Bless
a low blow.
him.
That was a low blow.
Anyway, sorry, Carrie's random fact.
This actually does involve the T-Rex.
Okay.
Did you know that the carnivore, Carnotaurus, and the great T-Rex lived actually further in time from each other than the T-Rex did to us?
Nope.
Did you want to know?
No, I did not want to know that.
Yeah, there's about 76 billion years. Million years, sorry, not billion, million years.
Oh, right.
Between the
How
Carnotaurus,
dare you get that so wrong?
Yeah, I know. Between the Carnotaurus and the T-Rex, and there's only about 64 between the T-Rex and us today, sitting here right now.
Nope.
There is more chance of you historically in time being eaten by a T-Rex than a Carnotaurus. Yeah, Carrie's random fact.
Yay. I hated that. So, that is the end of this week's episode of A Nice Cup of History. Find us on all social medias at Cup of History.
And now TikTok as well.
And we are now on TikTok. So find us. At the moment, there's not that much on there at the moment. We're working our way through. We've got a few videos ready to go up.
Yep. But it gives you a chance to put some faces to the voices.
Yes. I mean, we haven't actually done an introduction video. We should probably do that.
Yeah, we kind of assume that they know who we are.
Yeah, we kind of started off with a video of my dog, so... But yeah, so find us on TikTok, A Nice Cup of History. And obviously, find all our other podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks' time with another truth behind a fairy tale.
Ooh, I'm excited.
Yes, and this one is dark.
Ooh.
It's a dark cup of history that involves a fairy tale. So if that intrigues you, listen in, and we'll speak with you soon.
See you later.
Bye.